Hello students, this is your video to review the 9 competencies that are discussed in this issue of Intercom that is up on the screen right now. You've seen this a few times this semester. I asked you to read it once early in the semester and then review it more recently. Now this time we're going to be looking at these competencies a little bit more closely, one by one. But I'm just going to scroll through the early pages of this particular issue of the newsletter to show you how these competencies are being promoted within the STC here. The STC is just launching these certification exams. So the proficiencies that you were looking at are from the foundation exam, and that is the only one that is available right at this moment, but they will have 2 other levels of exams going forward. In some of the practitioner interviews that you all attended, the subject of whether to get an exam qualification was worth it to get certification for a communication professional, and some of the tech writers and professional writers from Sandia had varying ideas on that. But the reason why we're looking at these in this class is there are 9 of them, and they have basically been derived from some of the central themes of your course. And so this part of the newsletter here talks about what certifications do and why professional organizations offer them, specifically why the Society for Technical Communication is offering them now, what they can do for an individual, why an employer would find them desirable. This is just an overview. I don't know if any of you read these introductory pages, but you might want to take a look at it. So, as I said, the only exam that's available right now is the foundation exam. This is really designed for people who are starting out in the profession, who've graduated from college and who are starting out in the profession. Practitioner is for somebody with more years of experience, and expert is somebody with lots of experience. So what we're really looking at today is these 9 areas of competency. You've read this. This is what I assigned to you. So I'm not really going to scroll through this now. I have a PowerPoint prepared, which I'll switch over to in just a minute. But it's probably familiar to you that these were created through a research process that's described in this paragraph. And we are using them within our curriculum at UNM for a technical and professional writing program as the framework that undergirds our professional and technical writing minor. So starting in English 219 and going through many of the courses in the minor, these 9 competencies will resonate. That's part of our curriculum redesign. So right now, I just wanted to point this out to you one more time, and then we'll go through each of these outcomes in this PowerPoint video that I'm going to start now. So you need to know these competencies because you need to refer to them in your final project, which will be assigned on Friday, and I will be developing the way that you need to use them in the assignment itself and in the video that goes along with the assignment that you'll see next week. So you need to pay attention to these, and you need to look for their imprint on curricula. Not just the curriculum that you have at UNM, but the curriculum at other institutions that have professional and technical writing programs. And you also need to see how they appear in the workplace practices of the practitioners who you spoke to. They might not name them explicitly, but you can certainly see their existence within their day-to-day workplace activities. Okay, so the 9 competencies are listed in the graphic at the bottom there. They're a little hard to see in the slide, but you're probably familiar with them already, and I'm going to go through them one by one. Now, what I want you to start thinking about in light of these competencies is how they undergird an undergraduate student's technical and professional communication education. So these are basically the central concepts that shape everything that you learn in the entire curriculum in the minor and the certificate program here at UNM. And I would postulate that they also undergird the curricula at many other institutions, and we'll get to that at the end of this slideshow. So the first one that's mentioned is project planning. And so I've just pulled out some phrases from the descriptions from the newsletter article, and I've included them here in this list, plus one more point concerning our class specifically. So project planning, what work is involved in planning and managing projects? How do teams manage a project through its life cycle? And this also concerns planning, goal setting, and tracking. So if project planning is one of the first proficiencies, that means somebody who takes this foundation exam has to demonstrate that they understand the nuances of project planning. How does a technical communicator manage a project? What are the steps involved in that? How does one manage a team? And you had some experience with this semester working as part of a team. So a life cycle of a team project concerns the foundation parts of that, the drafting, the revising, the revision, the testing on audiences, and the release. So a life cycle is exactly what it sounds like. The cycle that a document goes through from its inception to its release. Finally, this last point, planning, goal setting, and tracking, is obviously not only concerned with planning, but how do you make sure that you're achieving the checkpoints that you established? And how do you track your progress? Maybe you dealt with this as part of your group project. So this final bullet point says, how have you practiced project planning this semester? I hope the answer to that is relatively obvious to you. The next one is project analysis. So the analysis part of this should pop right out at you, because one of the most important things that you analyze, and the tech writers who came to visit you all really stress this, is as a tech writer, you need to analyze your audience. You need to identify your readers and assess the contexts in which they are going to use the documents that you create. So concepts of audiences, users, readers, and their preferences are incredibly important for tech writers at all stages of their career. So also, it is important to consider the rhetorical situations and the global contexts in which your audience is going to use documents. You've probably studied rhetorical situation in your other core writing classes at UNM, and we've touched a bit on global contexts of use. So this doesn't simply concern what country or what language your perhaps international piece of technical communication is going to be used, but there are many cultural variables that you need to know about and carefully understand, thoroughly understand, which you would arrive at through analysis of the audience. So how have you learned to evaluate audiences and their needs this semester? How have you learned to modify your output based on the audience's needs? So what particular ways is this impacted by international context? So these are really important questions for you to be able to answer. I leave them as the last bullet point on all of the slides throughout this presentation, because these are things that I hope by the end of this class you could answer quite clearly. The next of the 9, number 3, is content development. So you need to, in this foundation exam, were you to take it, have knowledge of technical genres: memos, descriptions and specifications, proposals, activity reports, and analytical reports. We've practiced some of these genres, but throughout the entire curriculum in our program, you would be exposed to all of them. Research experience is also important in the content development process. The original source material is crucially valuable if you're creating new documentation for products or practices that already exist. You need to understand the scope of research questions if you are generating a new report, and you need to know how to document your sources. So ask yourself, in what genres have you written this semester and in other courses in our minor? And what research avenues have you pursued? So you've done some primary research already, which was interviewing. You've done secondary research, which is online research and reading scholarly articles. I happen to give those to you, but if you were doing your own secondary scholarly research, you would use online web tools and database tools to do that research. Of course, if you were in a workplace, you would appeal to subject matter experts and you would pursue other research paths as well. Organizational design. So this concerns organizing and drafting technical documents, and it's got design in the title, so this should ring some bells for you. So patterns and rhetorical moves for specific parts of the document. So a document's design is not simply about the content that it has in it, the textual content that it has in it. There are specific rhetorical tactics that you use to appeal to your audience in different parts of a specific kind of document. So if you're writing a report or a memo and you have an introduction and a conclusion in that kind of document, you're going to do specific writerly things in those parts of the document to convince your reader. So you need to think about in which kinds of documents do you do what kind of things. So my question to you would be, how have you organized and designed your technical content or your textual content in your documents this semester? And the next is written communication. So there are general guidelines for composing in written, print, and in online form. So those are two categories. So you can basically think if you're a tech writer and you're writing documentation for a product that is going to be sort of a printed brochure or be available in full PDF online, that's basically still a print genre. As opposed to exclusively online, perhaps more interactive format or even a rich media format. That would be video or something else that's dynamic but still contains written content. In these two categories, you still have to think about style, strategies of persuasion, tone, and the readability or the usability that resonates with chapter 13 that you just read, the usability of document and web content. So again, there are these two basic categories, print and electronic. And of course, electronic has many subcategories, like what kind of device is somebody reading your content on? And then there are the global and local audiences for your content. So what has your level of engagement been in our course with audience-suited style, tone, and readability? What general guidelines have you learned about making sure that your writing is clear, comprehensible, well-organized, well-edited? So visual communication, you did a big project on this, so hopefully this rings some bells. Visual communication principles, so use of graphics and creating data displays. So you used graphics on a number of levels. So you created data visualizations, but you also contained them within a PowerPoint presentation, which you had to assess for the effectiveness of that template, whatever template you used. So informational graphics, you studied these, and there are many categories. There are just a few listed here: bar charts, line graphs, and tables. Design principles, your Markel book mentions these: balance, alignment, grouping, consistency, and contrast. If you took the visual communication class for undergraduates here at UNM, or if you take it in the future, these will be a major focus in that class. And this concerns not just to graphical aspects, shapes or pictures or visualizations on the page. It also concerns how you present your text on the page as design elements. So visual information is related to effective presentation delivery. So the concept of being able to present clearly and deliver effective presentations as being very important to a technical communicator's career is really expressed in this point. And that being able to present well has a lot to do with how well you use visual information to help support whatever message you're trying to share. So my question to you is, I want you to think about how you've practiced these graphics and presentation skills this semester. So reviewing and editing, this is something it's probably familiar to you from every writing class you've taken, but there are many levels of editing: revising, substantive editing, copy editing, proofreading, and you need to obviously catch grammatical and mechanical errors in this process, but there are many other layout related things that you might catch as well. There's a class dedicated to editing at UNM and in almost every technical writing program. It is a foundation, as many of the tech writers who visited you all mentioned, for what you do on a day-to-day basis as a tech writer. It's sort of the bread and butter. So other courses, as I mentioned, explicitly address editing practices, but how have you managed editing processes in your documents this semester? So content management, this concerns managing information development teams, So specific dimensions concern web development, basic features of websites, and best practices for creating content for the web. So again, you just read chapter 13. I assigned this chapter at this point in the course because we've just been studying usability, and web content is intimately concerned or intertwined with concepts of usability. So, are you creating content that's easy to use, that presents itself, that loads the way that you want it to on a website? So, considering wikis, blogs, videos, podcasts, and social networks as realms of technical information production is obviously more and more important because more and more information is being disseminated through these sorts of channels. So, what has your exposure to online content concerning our focal subject matter been this semester? So, what kind of online content have you consumed? I've asked you this semester to do some of your own research for online content that concerns whatever you've read a certain week. And how have you produced your responses to this content? Sometimes I've asked you to create a memo and save it as a document. Sometimes I've just asked you to write content into the discussion board window. You've had to do presentations, you've had to do screen captures, so you've had to create content in various ways. But if you're actually creating a website, which maybe you've done in some other classes, there's a lot that you need to consider concerning not just sharing it with me as your instructor, but making sure the website is usable to a wide array, ideally, of audiences, even if you're doing it within the context of a course. So production and delivery. So how do outcomes relate to the development of a final product? So if you think about outcomes, they are what you plan to get at the end of a process. So when we have learning outcomes for courses like we do for this class, those are the things that I'm intending for you to achieve or get by week 16. So similarly, with a technical document creation cycle, you have desired outcomes for that. So how does the articulation of those outcomes relate to the development of that product? So if you set the objectives and use them throughout the process, they can help you to measure your effectiveness. So have you specifically set objectives for yourself for the products you have produced in this course? Well, hopefully you've set goals for yourself. Maybe it was a grade goal. Maybe it was just successfully being able to create a certain kind of document. And I would also ask you, have I set objectives for you? And the answer to that is yes. I try to give you a clearly articulated prompt and a rubric that tells you what I'm hoping you achieve. So here I'm showing on the screen the courses that are part of our undergraduate minor in technical and professional writing at UNM. So we finished going through the 9 competencies covered in the Society for Technical Communications Foundation exam. And I went through those and gave you examples as I did. Now I'm segueing into showing you the courses that constitute our minor because this is the next step you're going to need to take in your white paper assignment, which as I said, I'll release on Friday, but you have to come to an understanding of what university programs in technical and professional writing include. So our minor includes all of these things listed on the screen. All of these courses, these are required here, and you should read through and see what they are. These ones are elective, and these are capstones. You have to pick one. So that is the structure of our minor. Now, here is our course description. I'm not going to read through this, but I've used purple text here to signal some of the aspects of the course description that resonate with those 9 competencies that I just went through. So my goal as your instructor is to make sure that we're sort of satisfying some of those competencies as we work through material in this course over 16 weeks. Now, if you look at other programs throughout the country in technical and professional writing, you'll see that they do things in various ways. Their programs are called various different things. So this is a really innovative program at the University of Washington that I'm showing you on the screen. They used to be called technical writing, but now they're called human-centered design and engineering. That sounds very sciencey, I'm sure. It's an interdisciplinary program that pulls in a lot of skills from the sciences, from math, from art, from design. So again, it's interdisciplinary, but the goal is to really allow students who go through this program to have skills that represent the various sorts of things that technical communicators will be doing in the future. So if you look back at our program structure, and then you look at something like the University of Washington's, they have their degree requirements. And if you were to visit this page, you could scroll down and you could see, and again, this is a major, ours is a minor, but you could see what makes their program really unique. So I've shown you these two examples just as a illustration of what you're going to have to do in your white paper. You're going to have to really think carefully about the 9 competencies. You're going to have to think about what you learned from practitioners in technical and professional communication in your interview and in your own research. And you're going to have to research existing technical and professional communication programs that exist throughout the country. I've given you 2 examples, ours and University of Washington's, but there are many, many, many. You have to research them and see what kind of courses they require. And you need to think very carefully about those requirements. In your white paper, you will make basically a series of suggestions to program administrators about what they need to consider as they maybe revolutionize, maybe revise their degree requirements, their minor concentration, to really equip undergraduate students to be prepared for the technical and professional writing workplace of today. The Society for Technical Communication, with its 9 competencies, is kind of articulating what those expectations for the field today are. So you need to ask yourself, are the college programs that are advertising themselves as technical and professional writing, or as, like this one, human-centered design and engineering, are they adequately, through their coursework, preparing students for the realities of the workplace? So this video was intended to kind of put the pieces together between the 9 competencies and a few examples of academic programs. The next video I will include next week will show how you will start doing your research to generate your own white paper, basically a thought piece on this problem of the school to work transition for technical and professional communication students. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your week.